Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Dr. Godara Balwant, and I see that we already have colleagues who've joined us from Nepal, from Thailand, from Singapore, from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Cambodia. So thank you very much to everyone who's already joined. Let's wait for a couple more minutes before we get going to allow the other colleagues to join a couple of minutes late. And I'd also like to welcome two colleagues, Jose Jesse, who is a colleague of mine from the SWA Secretariat. There he is. And he's our resident expert and senior advisor on all questions related to climate. And we have Dr. Jeremy Kolitz from the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney, who will be presenting several cases of climate resilient wash services and infrastructures. So a couple more minutes before we get started. I just wanted to request that you please put your names and your affiliations and your email IDs, if that's okay, in the chat so that we can have a proper follow-up. I just wanted to remind you also that we are recording this webinar, and the recording will be made available as well as the slides. They'll be made available on the website of the sector ministers meeting. So that is given at the bottom left of this slide. And yeah, so those are a couple of housekeeping notes. I propose that we wait for exactly 1 more minute. And we already have quorum because we have 20 attendees who are now here. So we can get started in 1 minute if that's okay. Okay, so I suggest that we get started. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody. As I was saying a couple of minutes earlier, my name is Balwant Godara. I work with the SWA Secretariat, and I've been with SWA for 7 years now. And my initial role and my continuing role has been with the Francophone African countries, which are mostly in Central and Western Africa. And as of January of this year, I have also taken the additional charge of all the Asia-Pacific countries. So these are countries uh, which go from Afghanistan all the way till Fiji. And I myself am based on the other end of the Indian Ocean. So I live on a place on an island called Reunion Island, which is a French island, quite a small one, which is right next to Mauritius and to Madagascar. So uh, welcome to the second webinar. I hope you can see my slides. I hope you can hear me. I request that you please keep your mics off for the moment. We will hopefully have enough time and enough opportunities for consultations. Also, as I was saying earlier, we're recording this session so that it can be made available later. So to colleagues who have to leave early or who have, who are not with us today. And uh, the last housekeeping note, yes, just your names and affiliations on the chat so that we can follow up. Welcome everyone. I see that we have colleagues who've already joined us from Pakistan, from Nepal, from Micronesia, from Singapore, Thailand, Bangladesh, Cambodia, and yeah, these are the names, these are the countries that I was able to identify, at least from the names of the people that I know. But there are doubtless others. There's even one colleague from Zimbabwe, and I wanted to request that he please wait for the webinar on the which is specific to Africa. So I've noted your email ID, and I can send you the link for that webinar, which I think you will find to be a little more relevant for you. So this is the agenda of our webinar today. I'll just tell you quickly about the state of reflection on the sector ministers meeting. So the objectives and the outcomes and the preparations. And then we will go to unpack the theme of the sector ministers meeting, which is water, sanitation, climate, and the environment. And for that, my colleague Jose from the SW Secretariat will help us out a bit. And then we will also look at what this theme means in practice. So what the integration between WASH, climate, and environment means in practice. And especially because this is not a lecture on the integration between WASH and climate, we will look at how the sector ministers meeting it incorporates integration into it, and it supports the integration as well. So without further ado, let me get started with the small description of this sector ministers meeting and the state of reflection as it is now. So you can see the key objectives on this slide. So the key objectives, colleagues, are to strengthen political leadership, which has been the mandate of SWA right from the beginning. But this time, focusing on the integration between water and sanitation services, water resource management, and climate. So that's one of the objectives. Another one is obviously to catalyze systems and reforms so that this integration can take place, and so that we are able to mobilize enough partnerships and financing for this. And the third objective is the high-level leaders compact on water security and resilience. So this is something that is inspired by the heads of state initiatives that we've been working on for the past 3 years. And but this time it's at the global level. So I'll come to it in a bit. These are the objectives. Uh, then the outcomes. The outcomes, I won't read the entire slide. It's very text heavy, but basically they're related to the objectives, as I said, which I just mentioned. And you would have an integrated policy agenda. You would have reform and financing, and you would have this high-level leaders compact. So I'll let you read these slides at your ease after the webinar. But for now, I wanted to create a link with the heads of state initiatives. So we've been working on the heads of state initiatives since UNWC, the water conference in 2023, and currently it includes about 20 countries. There is a core group which has been around since the very beginning, adding new members as we go along. So there's SWA, UNICEF, IRC, WaterAid, and then the English and the Dutch cooperations. And this heads of state initiatives and all the lessons that we've learned are the inspiration for the high-level leaders compact that I just mentioned. So you see, in the region of Asia Pacific, we've already been working, and I've perhaps been communicating too much. I've been sending way too many messages to many of you, especially those in Cambodia and in Nepal, because we're working on these initiatives in these two countries. And in all of my discussions with pretty much everyone here, we've mentioned these as being, one of the strongest mechanisms of SWA over these past years. Now, the approach that each country takes and the shape of this initiative really depends on the specificities of the country. So if you look at the bottom right, we are currently working with these countries, and these are just some examples. So, in Burundi, for example, we're working on a presidential compact, which, if everything goes well, would be signed this week. In Nepal, as many of you already know, we are working with on what we call the Prime Ministerial Initiative. So that's the Pratibadhata. In Côte d'Ivoire, which is another country that I engage with, we're working to get the president to declare next year as the year of wash, uh, to align with the African Union's declaration that next year is the year of wash. In Cambodia, we've been reflecting on flagship programs, if that's necessary, to build on the enormous progress towards open defecation free. And in my own country, India, obviously, we know about the Swachh Bharat mission. So the shape that it takes really depends on the country's specificities. But you do have a common thread, which is that the sector reflects on what needs to be celebrated in terms of what has been achieved in the sector, but also what needs, problems and knots which cannot be untied unless there is decision and beyond the water sector. So typically, sector financing, the sector alone by itself will not be able to mobilize the adequate financing. Or, for example, when it's about intersectoral coordination around the question of water, the wash sector in itself and by itself will not be able to ensure that. And so these are some things which require endorsement and, how do I say, instruction in a certain sense from the head of state or the head of government. So we've been working quite a bit, with about 20 countries on this, and regularly we have these convenings, these gatherings in which we take stock of these of the progress made in countries. We celebrate. We use these to have the declaration of we have the declaration of the compact or of the initiative by the head of state. So the next such convening is at the end of this month. It's actually on the 1st of July, sorry. And it's on the sidelines of the Financing for Development Conference, which is happening in Spain. And we are going to look at, so there are going to be two countries, Burundi and Nepal, which are going to be highlighted for the progress made. And then we've invited about 20 other countries and many, development partners for discussions on how you finance the commitments or the priorities which are expressed by heads of state and heads of government. So luckily, we have quite a few examples already. The easiest example to cite is my own country, India, about how the Swachh Bharat mission was financed. But you also have one very recent one from South Sudan, etc. So we are going to discuss very much about what financing, how to mobilize financing through the heads of state initiatives. Now, what is the link between this, that, the oft repeated heads of state initiatives and the sector ministers meeting? Well, one is that they are mutual accelerators of progress, right? So, uh, just to give you just only this one latest example, the progress that has been made in Nepal and Burundi has been very much driven by the fact that we wanted this event at the Financing for Development Conference. And so that's given us the milestone towards which to work. And hopefully, the sector ministers meeting will help in accelerating the work on heads of state engagement in a few countries, right? Then the document, the preparations that you will conduct for the sector ministers meeting, they will feed directly to the head of state document because they will consist of analyses on the link between WASH, climate, and environment. And then the sector ministers meeting would be a touch point for the head of state initiatives, like this event in Sevilla. And then this is also a way the sector ministers meeting, the way that you prepare, and given the theme especially, it becomes a way to sensitize and to mobilize ministries of finance and ministries of environment on the question of heads of state initiatives. And finally, the compacts that are signed or the initiatives that are signed, they are the inspiration for the high level leaders compact. So this is a quick link with the sector ministers meeting, between the sector ministers meeting and the heads of state initiatives. Now, I wanted to go to the next section on the preparations, but before I do that, let me just sort of remind the importance of this, and I'm speaking with all of my gray eminence of having been around since the past three sector ministers meeting, and why should ministers consider attending the sector ministers meeting? And why should the ministries of WASH lead the preparation? So, in 2019, the theme was inequalities, right? And so the preparations for that sector ministers meeting were very much focused on leaving no one behind. And therefore, countries were able to really fine tune, some countries were able to really fine tune their WASH policies and strategies so that no one was left behind. So, something that was at the back of people's mind now took center stage, which was the inequalities to access. Then this time, uh, the preparations and the meeting itself, they provide a very strong opportunity, if you will, to integrate water, sanitation, climate, and environment. And by leading the preparations, you would be able to see how these can really be integrated in practice in your respective countries. And then obviously there is the head of state engagement and the head of state commitments. And this year is particularly important because there's a sector ministers meeting, obviously, but then it also feeds into the COP30. My colleague Jose will speak about that in a bit. It's also one of the milestones towards the UN Water Conference. And the UN Water Conference is really about implementation around water and sanitation. So I think it gives us a chance to engage on these international processes, but also by participating, and this has happened so many times before, by participating in a meeting of this sort, ministers, they become convinced and thereby they become convincing when it comes to water and sanitation. And we've had these examples from Nepal, I've had these examples from Cote d'Ivoire, from Madagascar, from many countries already. So that is one of the main reasons why we should try and convince our sector ministers to participate. Okay, so I'll just catch my breath here and see that there are no questions. I don't see them, but as I said, we'll get enough chance to speak about them in a bit. Let me quickly tell you about the preparatory. Okay, so there's a question from Jack about the integration between WASH and climate change and not to health instead. I'll come to that in a bit, Jack, if that's okay with you. Our colleague from the World Toilet Organization. So I'm just noting this down. I'll come to that in a bit. Now, the preparation for the sector ministers meeting, colleagues are, they've proven to be as important, if you will, as attendance of the meeting itself. And, on the one hand, because they do allow for a lot of momentum to be gathered in the sector. And some of the documents and analyses that are produced are then become sort of like mainstays of the WASH sector, or the core documents of the WASH sector. Now, you on the website of the sector ministers meeting, you can find details on the preparatory process, because there is a guidance note as usual. But essentially, the activities are well, one of them are these multi-sectoral and inclusive dialogues and analyses. Obviously, these feed into the country overview, which is sort of like the core document that is produced. And then obviously there is the engagement, media and communications. And the country overview that is developed, it ends up feeding into the minister's interventions during the meeting. And it becomes a part of the briefing package for the ministers. So the preparatory process, you have this series of webinars. We started in April. Uh, at the end of April, it was the announcement of the sector ministers meeting, 6 months before the meeting. And today we're looking deeper into the theme, and we're doing this by region. So I'm doing it for Asia Pacific today, and we're going to have it for Western Central Africa on Thursday. And my colleagues will engage with their own specific regions soon. Then there would be, at the end of July, we have a ministerial webinar on political leadership of the analyses and the decisions that have been produced. And then in September, this is the final countdown. Now, amongst the tools that are made available, there's the mutual accountability mechanism, which you already, I think, know of. It's one of the core mechanisms through which SWA works. And then you have the country self-assessments. So countries like Nepal have already done the country self-assessment, and besides Nepal, there are about 20 other countries that have done this. And the template for this country self-assessment has been updated to align with the theme of the sector ministers meeting. So around water resource management, around climate rationale, etc. This is divided into 6 themes. So the political will, with the cross-sectoral prioritization, the multi-stakeholder approaches, mutual accountability, as I mentioned, inequalities, etc. And basically, it provides the framework using which to have the consultations, and then its output is the self-assessment done by the multiple stakeholders in the country, and which then leads directly into the sector ministers meeting. Now, besides this, obviously, there's the templates, the communication support, etc. So please don't hesitate to get in touch with me when if you need any of these kinds of support, and I'll come to the other kinds of support as well. Now, I wanted to have a very short consultation, because it allows me also to catch my breath, and it allows you to stop listening to me. If you would just visit menti.com and use this code 23407352, and you would be able to connect to a poll, a very simple one that we have built, so that we can see how far the country preparations have progressed in the different countries. So if you would please like to connect to this, then I give you a couple more minutes, and I will start sharing the Mentimeter screen. Are you able to see it now? Could one person just confirm that you can see the screen which says regional webinar and then which has the code at the top? Yes. Okay, good. So you should now be able to, thank you so much. You should now be able to go on. And yeah, I see that there's already a couple of responses that have come in already. So here, it's a very simple opening question, which is, have you already heard of the sector ministers meeting? So I mean before today, not today, but before today. Uh, Saima Ashraf Sahiba, I've noted your question on the country self-assessment. I'll come to that in a minute or so. And so I imagine that many of you would have already heard of the sector ministers meeting already. Now let me go on to the second question, which is this. I hope you can see the question. It's about the initial communication with the countries. So did you know that the save the date letters have been sent out to the ministers? And do you know that these letters have been forwarded to the right authorities? So we sent the letters out about a month ago to ministers of water, sanitation, environment, and health as our sort of initial catchment, if you will. And the question that I had for you was, would you like, did you know that do you know if they have been sent to the right authorities, by which I mean the cabinets of the ministers, by which I mean to the ministers themselves. So this is the second question, and I see that there was some amount of okay, so not everyone knew about these letters being sent. Now, I'm happy if you wish to forward these letters to you. If you can just tell me what countries you sort of represent, then I can forward the letters to you. You can put that on the chat, and I will make sure that they're forwarded to you. Okay. Now, the third question that I had was one step further, which is, have you already, in your respective countries, have you already met with other stakeholders to discuss the SMM specifically? Now, it could be a meeting in a corridor, yeah, which was really focused on the sector ministers meeting. And so I met with the colleagues in Bangladesh yesterday, for example, and I'll be meeting with government and other colleagues in Cambodia later today. So these are just two examples. But I know that for Nepal, all of our work with the sector around the Prime Ministerial initiative, the discussion on the sector ministers meeting has always been around in the background. So that's the other model of speaking about the sector ministers meeting. So I see that amongst the answers that have been given, it's that these dedicated meetings have not taken place. Now, I'm obviously available in case you want me as the regional coordinator to be a part of these meetings. So please don't hesitate to uh, please do not hesitate to tell me. And yes, I see the Diego from the UN system in Micronesia. It's true that you represent several states. Uh, so if you wish, I we can have a specific conversation about the letters that have been sent to these countries. Alok Majumdar, sir, you have written about the agenda uh, on uh, equitable wash financing. I'll come to that in a second, if that's okay, in climate vulnerable areas. Okay, I've noted these questions down, so thank you for that. Now we can just move to the last question about, which is really a more of a subjective one, which is what specific questions do you have about the sector ministers meeting? So if it's about how many delegates we can pay for, that's a very, very specific question. If it's about, and then there's already been questions about the country self-assessment and about whether the agenda will include equitable wash financing in it. So these are very specific questions. If you have any other specific questions, we can take a couple of minutes for you to write those questions down, and I can make sure that I come back to them. So please do write your specific questions here if you have, and they're anonymous, so I think we're safe that way. There was a question from our colleague at UNICEF in Cambodia, Santipip, whether I was presenting something. So I hope you can see my screen. Can you? In which you have these questions which are already appearing about whether water resources ministers are.
Balvan, this is Jose. We can just see the same slide
Which
that
is.
it says Regional Webinar Asia Pacific.
Oh, you could still see only that.
Yeah.
It's not moving. Whoops. I'm so sorry. Okay. No wonder. Okay. So let me just, can you see it now? Are you able to?
Yeah, now we see the questions.
Yeah, you see, can you see the last question which says, what specific questions do you have about uh, the sector ministers meeting? Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So then I see some questions that have been written down here. Water resources ministers, country workshop. Okay. Then commitments. Okay. Travel. Yes, obviously. And who attends? Okay. So I have a few questions now which I've noted here. Perhaps let me just go through these questions one after the other before we move on. But other colleagues, please do write uh, other questions you might have, and we'll get back to you. So, is the country self-assessment only for government? No, no, no. It's definitely a multi-stakeholder process. It's normally convened by the government, but I've had it done. I've seen it done in Zimbabwe, for example, where you have 25 or more than 25 persons who get together across all constituencies to do the self-assessment. And it is a sort of a grading system, but there are numbers involved, if you will. But these numbers really don't, they're not the primary interest for us. The primary interest is for us to have dialogue. And for example, I attended one in person, and in there was extreme disagreement between colleagues, between the civil society and the government, for example. That was one. But then there was also a lot of difference between uh, the same assessment for water services and the same assessment for sanitation. So they decided that it would be better, rather than giving an average score or an average thing, it would really be to disaggregate between water supply and sanitation. So yeah, it's a country process. It's has it should really be uh, multi-stakeholder. So research and learning in cases like Cote d'Ivoire, they were really the ones, they were the country monitoring champions. So they were the actual ones who conducted, who facilitated this entire country self-assessment. So that I hope, Sahiba, it answers the question. At the end of this presentation, at the webinar, you'll find the contact to my colleague Philippa, and she's very happy to help organize these things. Water resources ministers, yes, we have identified and invited ministers in charge of water resources, because water resource management is one of the key themes. I'm sorry, it is the key overarching sort of theme of the sector ministers meeting. So yes, they're involved. Country workshop. Now there are over 90 SWA partner countries. So SWA and there are maybe 15 of us in the secretariat. So, our generous focal points in countries, they often do get together in workshops. SWA is very happy to intervene virtually in these workshops. And we've seen this happen at different stages. So there can be a workshop in order to see what the preparatory process is going to be like. So it can be right away. There can be a workshop to do only the country self-assessment. There can be a workshop once the draft of the country overview has been prepared. There can be a workshop there, or there can be a workshop towards the end, just before the delegation leaves for the meeting, in order to finalize the preparations. So yes, definitely, country workshops are recommended, but is SWA planning for them? SWA can help you plan for them for sure. Can SWA plan them in each and every country? No, unfortunately not, because of capacity. Then does every country attend? Well, every SWA partner country and a few others, like the Philippines, for example, or Micronesia, which are not partner countries, they are invited. Do they all attend? No, they don't. For example, in the last sector ministers meeting, we had a total of 55 ministers who attended from 48 countries, I think. So that was about half of, or a little more than half of the SWA member countries. So not everyone attends. Now, the reasons for it can be very, varied. It can be political reasons about embargo on travel. It can be financial reasons about, and that reason is a preponderant one now. It can be reasons of clash in agendas of the ministers, etc. So not every country participates, but every country is invited, and we would like participation, obviously. The participants and the agenda and the objectives, it's not a very specific question, but I imagine it's about who is going to be in the meeting. So there are government delegations, so typically led by the ministers, but also and there are also delegations from support agencies, so the donors, the banks, the big corporations in some cases, companies, I mean. But then you also have delegations from research and learning. You also have delegations from utilities and regulators. So in the last meeting, as I said, there were 300 participants, of which 55 were minister rank persons. Which means there were about 250 non-ministers. So there is a very strong possibility of participation for not for non-ministers and non-government colleagues. Soon you will be receiving a message about how non-government constituencies can participate. Full support to government official to participate. I will come to that in a bit. But yes, we do have provision to cover a part of travel costs. But we, in no case, I think, can we cover the entire delegation going. I'll come to that in a bit, if that's okay with you. I think I've more or less, yes, the commitments, that's the mutual accountability mechanism. It's fairly well mastered now. It's been around for 7 years. And so there is always a chance, and we're even encouraging it strongly, that countries report on their previous commitments and table new commitments. And what we have seen is that the sector ministers meeting are really a period of intense activity in terms of commitments with the mutual accountability mechanism. So yes, there are very much these possibilities of reporting on previous commitments and on tabling new ones. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing this now. The first consultation has been done. Thank you so much for it. And I'm now going to go back to the slides and quickly tell you about we get into unpacking the theme of the sector ministers meeting. And let me just, sorry, my apologies. Yes. I hope you can see the slides now, and I hope you can not see the notes that I scribbled for myself. The theme is uniting political leadership uh, for integrating water, sanitation, and climate action. Now, a main the dimension or a pillar of such a theme obviously has to be water resource management. So it's really about the cooperation between water-related services, water supply and sanitation in our case, climate action, so how water and sanitation are affected by climate change, but also how they help design climate action, and water resource management. So I won't read this slide. Uh, we basically have one objective of the SMM, which is about the integration at the level of policy. So I will come to this because this will be a part of our next the next question that I would like to for us to discuss, and the next poll. But basically, you have the integration of typically water and sanitation in climate action or climate policies. Then climate resilience into WASH policies. And now we're talking about water stress and competing demands as well. So you get into water resource management. So that includes, in fact, that necessitates rather a cooperation between different institutions. Then there is the question of the climate narrative. So there are still many countries for which the water and sanitation sector does not have a clear climate narrative, right? So besides the generalities of why WASH is important for climate and climate is important for WASH, I think there are some countries where these assessments have not been done, these bottleneck analyses have not been done. And so that would be a second part of integration at the level of policy. And then obviously there is disaster risk reduction, right? So many countries, including many countries that are here, are faced with disasters. And so how do you integrate the disaster risk reduction with water and sanitation? So these are the three sort of sub-themes when it comes to policy integration. Then there are the themes where sub-themes when it comes to uh, financing, especially. And for that, there are three different sub-themes. One of them is, does the wash sector have a clear investment pathway uh, for its own climate resilience, for universal access, and for water security? So that's one of the sub-themes here. Another one is performance-driven incentives and regulatory frameworks which allow for equitable finance. And that, I think, responds to a question that was asked whether the SMM will consider equitable wash financing in climate vulnerable areas. So yes, it will. And then there is the idea of valuing water as a common good through approaches which are just and sustainable. So here we are really talking about underserved populations and about climate vulnerable areas. So it is going to be a theme, obviously. And then you have the high level leaders compact on water security and resilience, which is one of we're hoping for it to be the main outcome uh, of the sector ministers meeting. So many of you have already heard of compacts at the national level, which are signed and endorsed by heads of state and heads of government. But what we're trying now is to get inspired by this, but to act at the level of at the global level. So rather than a generic call to action, or a statement that comes out of a ministerial meeting, we are looking for a high-level leaders compact, so which would include ministers, which would include members of our Global Leadership Council, which would include the leaders of the partners that are at the meeting or that are preparing for the meeting. And it is basically a set of priorities and commitments which are common to all the countries present, but which then allow you to design specific engagement in each country, right? So it would then also obviously feed, we're hoping for it to feed directly into COP30 and the UN Water Conference in 2026. So you see, it is an output of the sector ministers meeting, but it is an input into political prioritization in the country. So when the ministers go back to their respective countries, and it is also an input into the international processes, which are COP30 and the UN Water Conference, the next UN Water Conference. So this is the broad outline of the high level leaders compact. Now, I wanted us, if it is possible, to please go back to the same mentee. And this time we get a chance to, yes, this time we get a chance to tell, to see which themes uh, are most relevant in your particular country, right? So these are the 7 themes. You can see them on the screen, I hope. And so first, there was uh, cooperation between institutions when it comes to uh, wash and water resource management, right? Another one is about, sorry, I'm just going to put up that slide again. My apologies. So you can see it. I hope you can see it now. These are the relevant sub-themes. So the first is cooperation between institutions in charge of wash and water resource management. The second is the climate narrative for the wash sector. So the analysis. The third is wash and disaster risk reduction. The fourth is integrated investment pathways. You see, I touched upon that quickly when it comes to water security, climate resilience, and universal access to services. Then you have a fifth, which is regulatory frameworks. And you have sixth, the sixth, which is about valuing water as a common good, and the seventh, which is the high level leaders compact. So if it, I would like us to please go back to Menti and tell us about which of these you think are particularly relevant for your country. And you can obviously select multiple ones. I see that you've already responded to quite a few. So let's leave a couple more minutes so you can respond to them. I'll leave this slide, I'll leave this up on the screen. right? And then that would be the end of our first big segment. And then I'll be very happy to give the floor to my colleagues who are here with us. So yeah, please take maybe a couple more minutes. So the question, colleagues, is which of the sub-themes are particularly relevant to your country? You can select multiple ones. Uh, so there was the institutional bridges between wash and water resource management. There was the climate narrative for the wash sector. There is the link between wash and disaster risk reduction. Then there are the integrated investment pathways between climate action, resource management, and wash services. Then there are the incentives and the regulatory frameworks allowing for proper financing of the sector. Then there is valuing water as a common good, meaning a very strong focus on inequalities and universal access. And then there is the political declaration inspired by the presidential compacts and the prime ministerial initiatives. So, yes, please. I see there was one hand raised. Mr. Shah Nasir Khisro. Yes, please. If you have a specific question, then
Yeah,
please.
sorry, sorry,
Yeah,
I joined a bit late, so but please link share the link so I can vote.
the
I mean,
link.
pick.
Oh, okay. So the link,
Yeah.
I'll share it with you. I'll put it on the chat, sir. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's menti.com, and the code, you can see it. The code is here, 23407352. Okay. Lovely. So I think we can stop this section now. Thank you so much for this. Because the consultation that I have with you today about which sub themes are particularly relevant, that will allow us to design the agenda and the ministerial dialogues during the sector ministers meeting. So this is quite invaluable. Thank you so much for participating in this. I'll stop sharing this now and move back to the slides and hand it over quickly to my colleagues. So the second part of our webinar, colleagues, is really about what this theme of water, sanitation, climate, and environment means in practice. And by practice, we will mean at the level of policy integration, at the level of climate financing, at the level of international processes, and at the level of tools and planning. And then some examples of how this has been done on the ground in terms of services and interventions. So let me hand over to my colleague, uh, Jose, who's with us. And if you could, please, Jose, take the floor in about 10 minutes, walk us through some examples. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you, Balvan, and good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. My name is Jose Gesti, as Balvan said, and I'm working at the Secretariat providing support on climate action. Yeah, if we can have the next slide. So first, we wanted to, when we talk about the integration of water sanitation and hygiene and climate policy, the first two slides is just to share with you a snapshot on how things look at the global level. This is what you see on the screen is an analysis conducted by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe that is hosting the Secretariat of the Water Convention. The Water Convention is a global convention, it's not just for Europe. Over the last year, there's been an analysis carried on to understand um, how water supply, sanitation, and hygiene are currently integrated in climate policy, and climate policy has been broken down into how water supply, sanitation, and hygiene is integrated into nationally determined contributions and national adaptation plans. And what you see on the screen right now is how water supply, sanitation, and hygiene are integrated into nationally determined contributions. The methodology that has been followed is to see how many priorities each of your nationally determined contributions um, relate to any of these topics. So we have more or less we have confirmed what we were expecting, which is that in many cases it's not even mentioned. Water supply, sanitation, and hygiene priorities are not outlined in national determined contributions. And we've seen a few examples of countries worldwide where there is some integration. As you can see, one of the surprises it's been the fact that maybe sanitation and hygiene are actually better integrated into national determined contributions compared to water supply. But that may be also because of the fact that of the tool that it's being used, which is a tool that compares priorities between SDGs and nationally determined contributions. In the next slide, this has also been a surprise, but in this case, positive. When looking at the national adaptation plans that have been formulated, and the study by UNECE, by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, covers 58 NAPs up to September last year. Currently, there are 62 countries that have formulated and submitted their national adaptation plans, but this study covered 58. We see that water supply priorities in terms of adaptation linked to water supply, it's present in 61% of those 58 national adaptation plans. And here, when it comes to sanitation and hygiene, is where we see a decreasing trend, and we see um, less number of priorities established for adaptation in national adaptation plans. This has given us a good overview of what is the situation right now. Uh, just to remind you that national determined contributions cover both aspects, adaptation and mitigation, while obviously national adaptation plans cover only adaptation priorities. Not only that, but we have in the next slide, what we can see is deep dive and a study that is being conducted by the Stockholm Environment Institute in partnership with us in the Secretariat of Sanitation and Water for All. Here we've done a dive into trying to understand how sanitation is included in nationally determined contributions, and we see that the overall figure is that only 2% of all activities and priorities in establishing in national determined contributions relate to sanitation. Progress is being made. This is the second time that this in-depth analysis has been carried out. It was done already in 2019, where we saw even a much less number of priorities relating to sanitation in national determined contributions, and now it's been increasing up to 2%. Taking into consideration that the 2% refers to all activities, and more than 8,000 activities are established among all the nationally determined contributions. So 2% of them relate to sanitation. The next slide. We have obviously, because we've done this analysis exists on how water supply, sanitation, and hygiene is integrated in national adaptation plans. We do have good case studies and examples on countries that have made a very good integration and have brought priorities for water supply, sanitation, and hygiene. And what we can see on the screen is the case of Morocco, that it's made very thorough integration of sanitation into its national adaptation plan. Priorities, for example, that have been included in the NAP are resilient infrastructure standards with the development of new technical norms to withstand floods and water variability, ecological sanitation models, sanitation systems for autonomous systems in climate fragile regions, also urban risk integration with the stormwater and sanitation plans, mandatory for all new housing projects, and also an important goal for wastewater reuse. In the next slide, we also have one that is more pertinent for this region that we are speaking now, which is the case of, sorry, no, it's, we haven't, um, we have an example of Fiji that will come later, but now what we have on the screen is the integration of water supply into Congo's nationally determined contribution as well, with just for you to get a little bit of a tester of things that are integrated into nationally determined contributions. For example, in this case, the implementation of the water sanitation and hygiene policy, supporting the use of renewable energy, desalination processes, technological improvements in water and sanitation, improving the efficiency of irrigation water use, and building a sustainable legal and institutional framework. The next slide. We just wanted to share a little bit of in this preparatory process towards the SMM, and as you have seen, the integration of water resource management, WASH, and climate is at the center of the sector ministers meeting. So when it comes to the integration of water supply, sanitation, and hygiene into climate policy, a few recommendations and a call to action to you is like, as you may know, nationally determined contributions are currently being revised. Countries were expecting to submit their revised nationally determined contributions by February this year, but few countries have done so. And now it is expected that countries will be submitting no later than September. And this means that in many countries where you are working, now is the time to understand how is the national determined contribution being revised and whether you still have time to discuss with the stakeholders managing these processes, the integration of water supply, sanitation, and hygiene priorities into their revised NDCs. These revised NDCs are aiming at enhancing the ambition and therefore improving adaptation and mitigation outcomes in your respective countries. That's in relation to NDCs. In relation to national adaptation plans, can I have the previous slide, Barbara? In the case of national adaptation plans, only 62 countries have formulated their national adaptation plans and presented them. So this means that now is also the time to understand if your country has not presented their national adaptation plan. Stakeholders may be working around that, and it's a golden opportunity to integrate water supply, sanitation, and hygiene. Also, we understand that it's not only about integrating water sanitation and hygiene in climate policies, because it's also very much necessary to integrate climate into our own water supply, sanitation, and hygiene strategies. So it could be important that you get an overall sense whether that has already happened. And then, a key entry point that we wanted to highlight is that in water supply, sanitation, and hygiene, we have now a good entry point to discuss with our colleagues working with climate ministries of environment and climate change, because water supply and sanitation, it's now the first target of what is called the global goal on adaptation. It's a framework has been developed at the global level to drive action on climate resilience. And the first target of this global framework is on climate resilient water supply and sanitation. And therefore, we can use and utilize this target to feed and to penetrate into climate policy. But yeah, we can have the next one, Balon. What we present here is a diagram um, for 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 this integration, right? It starts with a stakeholder mapping, understanding, not only who are our traditional counterparts, in many cases it's been the link has been established with ministries of health because of the obvious connection between water services and public health. I think that that connection is being built many years ago, and is what we in many cases have in mind. And as you've seen, this sector ministers meeting is trying to, amplify a little bit the connections, not only with public health, but with water resource management and climate. So we think that this integration starts by understanding a little bit who are the stakeholders are working in these other spaces, conducting a policy analysis to understand exactly what we have revised now, which is to which degree water supply, sanitation, and hygiene are part of climate policy, but also to understand, as I had just mentioned in the previous slide, how climate is or not part of water, sanitation, and hygiene policies and strategies. Because if that connection and that narrative has not been built, a powerful tool and mechanism is conducting was risk assessments, understanding the hazards, the exposure levels, vulnerability, and also the capacity. If again, if that integration has not happened, conducting these assessments, and here we have on this call countries and colleagues that have been supporting this process and can give testimony on the powerfulness of this methodology. There, after conducting these risk assessments, you are in a good position to understand what are the solutions that you need to put in place, both for climate adaptation and mitigation. And it is then when we have those well identified, when we can look for the resources and the financing for it. With the identified solutions, obviously, we will be able to integrate them and to bring those priorities into national adaptation plans, into nationally determined contributions, and also to our own water supply, sanitation, and hygiene policies. The next slide, please, Barbara. So just a quick snapshot of 2 slides on climate finance, just to refresh. Obviously, climate finance is not the solution for everything, right? And climate finance, it's in some cases in the sector, we want to much better understand how to access climate finance. There are important opportunities and countries can benefit from it, but obviously the sector ministers meeting also is interested in fostering the idea that national resources are also needed, and climate financing by financing windows such as the Green Climate Fund is just one of the things that you could consider. But if we can have the next slide, please, Parvan. Just to let you know that Sanitation and Water for All has been working over the last 2 years very closely with the Green Climate Fund. We have supported the development of the water security guidelines that you can see on the screen. On the left side, you have the main guidelines, which outlines 2 key pathways for projects for the Green Climate Fund that relate to water broadly, water resource management, integrated water resource management, but also an important pathway for water supply, sanitation, and hygiene services. The main guidelines, which is the one that you can see on the left, is accompanied by annexes. The part 2 that you can see in the center of the slide gives much more detailed guidelines on how to develop projects around drought and flood management, integrated water resource management, but there is a distinct and standalone chapter on how to develop project proposals for water supply, sanitation, and hygiene. And not only that, last year, a set of stakeholders, including us in Sanitation and Water for All, we provided support to the development of a standalone part 3 of these guidelines on sanitation. So that was launched last year at COP29 in Azerbaijan in November. So we just wanted you to get some exposure to these guidelines, as specifically the last one on sanitation is fairly new. And just an example in the next slide of a successful climate financing proposal by Fiji. This is already an old proposal, and there are more, but we wanted to bring this one as is pertinent to this region. This is a comprehensive water supply and sanitation successful project that is actually being implemented for a number of years, and it will be completed next year in 2026. It's working with all these elements that you see on the screen: water supply improvements, wastewater management, that include the upgrade of wastewater treatment plant, pumping stations, also aiming at improving the quality, reduction of pollution in a number of specific locations, and supporting water demand management, non-revenue water programs, decentralization, etc. The next slide, because I think we are getting short of time now. Towards COP30, as Balban has mentioned, the sector ministers meeting is going to happen just a couple of weeks before COP, and we think it's the preparatory process towards the sector ministers meeting actually is a good preparatory process towards COP. The key messages is that the COP30 this year is in Brazil, is in November, as I said, just a couple of weeks after the sector ministers meeting in Madrid. That, as you know, will be sector ministers meeting is 22nd, 23rd of October. So Brazil COP, it again happens a couple of weeks after. This year COP30 is branded as an implementation COP. So it's very much like trying to have a feet on the ground, and it's going to have a special focus on adaptation as well. Again, ministers and delegations from countries can use the SMM to show leadership on integrating water and climate policies that we've been discussing, and also to commit climate resilient water and sanitation as part of national development, adaptation, and mitigation plans. The next one. Yeah, and as Balbo was talking, we want to drive the attention of moving from national dialogue to even playing a global influence. And the COP30, the 6 months preparatory process that we are living right now, is helping you colleagues in countries to identify and advance national priorities for climate resilient WAS, but also water resource management. The country overviews that we are discussing and that are a powerful tool to inform, what ministers will discuss um, in Madrid, can offer concrete inputs to also feed national adaptation plans and nationally determined contributions ahead of COP30. And it can also provide you the opportunity of showcasing the implementation of WAS, water resource management, and adaptation priorities on a global stage. A platform for ministers to articulate country-level progress on integrating water and sanitation into climate plans, as we're discussing, but also align efforts with global expectations under both the SDG framework and the Paris Agreement. And then to create, as we are calling for, a strong narrative to elevate water and sanitation as climate priorities at COP30 and also in future COPs. Back to you, Balban.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jose. So, in this intervention, we've seen about how to integrate WASH into climate policy, and one of the things that many colleagues here said in the previous poll was that the climate rationale of the WASH sector is not necessarily strong enough or developed enough, and so. The methodology that Jose presented, it'll be made available to you. It's been around for the past few years. It was used in the previous sector ministers meeting as well. So this was integration at the level of policy, and then he spoke. Thank you for speaking about climate finance, and also for emphasizing that it's not the panacea for the financing needs of the sector, but rather it's a part of a mix of financing possibilities. And finally, thank you for touching upon the link with the COP30, which is the implementation COP, as it's called. And I'll come to that in just a few minutes after our colleague, Dr. Jeremy Kolitz, who's a research director at the Institute for Sustainable Futures in Sydney. He will present a couple of examples on what this integration between WASH and climate looks like on the ground, literally, in terms of services and infrastructure. So, Jeremy, I will stop sharing. You can start sharing yours, and in the minute that we take for this transition, if there is anyone who has any questions for specifically for Jose, please do write them. Thank you.
Thanks, Balwan, and thanks everyone for tuning in for this presentation. As Balwan introduced, I will be speaking to the integration of WASH and climate action, focusing on WASH services and infrastructure. And for those of you that don't know me, my name is Jeremy Kolitz, and I'm a researcher at the Institute for Sustainable Futures at the University of Technology, Sydney in Australia. So very briefly, the things that I'll be covering, want to focus more on giving you tangible examples of what climate resilient WASH looks like in practice. There's lots of examples out there. They're rapidly emerging. I only have time for 4. But before I jump into that, I just want to provide some light theory that I think implicitly sits behind a lot of the WASH practice examples that you see. And I think it's useful for contextualizing what we'll be looking at. And then finally, I have a short slide on what I think is the future of, that should say, yeah, climate resilient WASH practice under climate change. So real briefly, just on some of the theory, the types of challenges posed by climate change for WASH could broadly be categorized in the 3 that you see on the screen. So we often think about this increasing risks and hazards. So we know there's going to be more floods, we know there's going to be more droughts, and so on, and that those have impacts on WASH infrastructure and services that we can predict. That's the obvious one. Another one that comes up a bit less often, but still widely recognized, is around deepening inequalities. And we know that the people who are going to be affected most are disadvantaged groups, and climate change has far-reaching potential to further entrench poverty and reinforce inequalities. And then finally, something I think we don't talk about enough is the uncertainty that climate change brings. Especially in the Asia-Pacific region, we don't exactly know what's going to happen with precipitation, for example. In a lot of regions, it could go up, it could go down, it could stay the same. It's really hard to know locally what's going to happen. And it's really hard to know the cascading effects of climate change in terms of how it's going to affect local ecosystems and how a society will respond. So broadly, the ways that we respond to these challenges in practice is to counter the increasing risks and hazards. We anticipate what we think are going to be the most severe, the most likely risks, and we integrate things into our WASH plans that we think will offset those anticipated impacts. To address inequalities, a lot of those are really driven by existing social, political, and institutional processes. So we can address the root causes of social vulnerability through interventions in society and institutions, rather than, say, through technology. And then the prevailing theory on what to do when you have a lot of uncertainty is to design systems to be more nimble, to be more responsive, so that they can detect changes in their surroundings and then change themselves to accommodate that. So there's a lot of WASH practice in terms of anticipating and planning for risks. There's increasingly more about addressing the root causes of social vulnerability. I've not seen very much on this third type about designing responsive systems to work within uncertainty. Another important point I want to make is that ultimately what we want to get from systems through climate resilient WASH practice is these 2 things: fundamentally good WASH systems and climate risk management practices. If you only focus on the top, if you only focus on climate risk management, it'll likely be ineffective because if the wash system that you're working on is dysfunctional to begin with, it doesn't really matter if you're trying to do climate risk management on top of that. So if you're trying to do a climate resilient water safety plan for a water supply that has no management model and is completely dysfunctional, it's not going to work. So in order for climate change programming to work, we have to have fundamentally good wash systems to begin with. Likewise, if we just focus on the bottom and we only talk about fundamentally good wash systems, then we're just doing what we've always done. We'd just be ignoring climate change and going forward as we usually do. So climate resilient wash practice, I think, needs to simultaneously be thinking about the new challenges that climate change presents, while also building on our what we think of as good practices. But to be clear, this bottom part just does not just mean business as usual. We might want to rethink the way we deliver fundamentally good wash systems. I think that speaks a bit to this third point about designing systems to be more nimble and responsive. I don't think that's how we typically design wash systems, so we could reconsider that. And the way we do climate risk management might also change some things about how we think about financial cost recovery and equitable service delivery and other things. So where to act? Climate resilient wash practice can be integrated at any level where wash practice is implemented. You'll be familiar with these items in the left-hand column. These are just sort of typical wash systems strengthening building blocks. And Jose's already talked a lot about some of these top ones about policy and strategy. But likewise, you can implement or integrate climate resilience really into any type of wash system. But I'll be talking more about service delivery and infrastructure in this presentation. So 4 examples. One, beginning with actually, this is a blend of 2 projects that I worked on with the University of Indonesia to work with governments to support service providers to plan for climate risks to urban sanitation. And this involved, in both instances, collecting data about the current climate impacts and the future climate risks to sanitation in cities in Indonesia. There's lots of different ways you can do that. We just did through simple surveys of households and interviews and expert opinions. Using that information to inform a prioritization of what are the most significant risks to plan for and where are the hotspots, so where in the city are the impacts most significant and most likely to affect vulnerable populations, and that's what's going on in this right-hand image. The government then developed indicators to monitor those priority risks in those priority areas, and then finally came up with near and long-term adaptation options to offset the risks. So some examples of adaptations they came up with were retrofitting containment units, so replacing old, crudely constructed septic tanks with prefabricated plastic septic tanks that were more resilient against flooding and groundwater ingress, and to offer free emptying services ahead of the rainy season to avoid containment units from overflowing. A second example comes from colleagues at SNV working in Laos. They were implementing a CLTS program and integrated climate change considerations into their standard CLTS activities, principally focusing on floods, which were the most significant risk in that area. They worked with communities to integrate flooding considerations into community mapping and transect walks. They also introduced a new power walk role play activity, which got the community to role play themselves as different disadvantaged members of the community to understand how flooding affects sanitation differently. And they supported sanitation marketing entrepreneurs to discuss why having robust, well-constructed latrines was important, because if communities built their own crudely constructed latrines, they would just likely fall over when there's flooding activity. The third example, I'm borrowing from colleagues in WaterAid working in Papua New Guinea. They worked with a council of women at the provincial level to provide them training on community-based water resource management, which involved understanding implications of climate change for water resources, but also had a heavy component on gender equality and even gender-based violence. And then that Women's Council in turn facilitated discussions and trainings with communities to talk about how to manage water resources and issues of gender equality in decision making. And then finally, a fourth example, and I see my colleague Nadia is on the call. This one comes from SNV in Nepal. This is just an example of, I think, of an infrastructure change that speaks to climate resilience. So recently in the lowlands region of Nepal, there was a drought. Many people use self-supply systems in which they dig their own sort of well and fit it with a pump. And a lot of those shallow wells went dry during a drought. And communities started setting up informal pipe networks, which was problematic because they were susceptible to contamination. And with support from SNV, local governments constructed a model piped network that was connected to a deep borehole that they knew could provide sufficient yields in the drought, and sort of demonstrated how that sort of demonstrated how the self-supply shallow wells were really not a climate resilient technology. But if you put in the effort of designing a borehole in an aquifer that you know has sufficient yield and designing a good solid pipe network, you can set up a infrastructure that will work even under drought conditions. So I'll end here. Just the last slide. I'll be really quick. I think the future of climate resilient WASH practice is going to go beyond the WASH sector. The IPCC in their latest assessment report had this statement that most observed adaptation is fragmented, small in scale, incremental, sector specific, designed to respond to current or near-term impacts, and more focused on planning than implementation. And they described this saying that adaptation action globally is inadequate. We're not doing enough. And they go on to recommend that we need to work less in silos and interface more with other sectors. So I think going forward, climate resilient WASH needs to be less about WASH and it needs to be more integrated solutions, and that we should think more about transformational changes. And WASH can be an entry point for bigger scale transformations. For example, we already see lots of organizations focus on challenging inequitable gendered or other social norms, like that WaterAid example I gave. Circular economy opportunities, if taken really seriously, can be transformational. I've done some work myself, again, with SNV colleagues in Nepal about facilitating local government decision makers to challenge their own assumptions and worldviews about what could be done in order to transform mindsets. And there's even legal innovations that can be made to have a more holistic approach to the human right to water and include the rights of rivers and actually have legal frameworks that address those two things simultaneously. So those are just some examples of things I think can help facilitate bigger scale transformations. And that's I think where the sector should be heading in the future. I think I used up all my time, so I'll stop there. Thanks, Pawan.
All right, lovely. Thank you so much, Jeremy. I think what you've done is complement what Jose spoke about, which was, the policy level, the financing, the international processes, and now you've given us some examples of how you build resilience into WASH services and infrastructures. So thank you so much for that. Let's leave a couple more minutes in case there are questions for you, Jeremy. And then I would request that colleagues, if you're able to stay for an extra 10 minutes, then I think we can close this. We can make a graceful exit from the webinar. So if there are any questions for Jeremy, please do go ahead. You can raise your hands or you can put them on the chat. Okay, so we have one question for you from Purba Mokhtan. So please do go ahead.
Thanks, Balwant. If I'm loud and clear,
yes, you are.
it
Yes,
was really a nice presentation from Jeremy. Thank you for insightful discussions. I just want to know more on the WASH system part. Since we have already a robust WASH system pillars, in a way, part of SWA as well, and even agenda for change, kind of IRC has led that. So can we see that pillars to be more on climate resilient? Each pillar that we can work with can be resilient to climate and other unforeseeable or foreseeable disaster risks. So how do you see this part? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the existing pillars that SWA have developed and IRC developed, I mean, that's what that table is based on. So I think looking at the existing pillars that we have and thinking of ways climate change can be integrated into our existing work is a good way to go. I don't think we need to come up with a new set of pillars or rearrange things. I think SWA has already done a bit of work in that space with their definition of a climate resilient wash service. So that table that I showed, that was a bit of a brainstorm where some colleagues came up with ideas about how we could build on the existing pillars. But there's lots of room for imagination and to continue to develop those.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for the answer. There was a question also from Saima Ashraf Bibi from Pakistan about how can we collaborate with you for research on WASH. I think that's a very pointed question at Jeremy. So if Saima ji, if you would care to share your email on the chat, then Jeremy can have access to it, and then you could take this up bilaterally. It's true that Jeremy's presentation was so inspirational that you almost feel like doing a PhD with him. So thank you so much. Okay, so I see that you've both written your email addresses here. So Jeremy, thank you so much, and please stay online if you wish to, or please feel free to leave if you need to. But I just wanted to close our webinar. So, we've sort of unpacked the theme of the sector ministers meeting and what the link between climate, water resources, and wash services means. And, we spoke quite a bit about the national adaptation plans, yeah? And Jose told us that there are 64 adaptation plans that have been studied, and there's an analysis has been done. So I would like a small consultation with you, the colleagues present here from different countries, on exactly this, on the integration of WASH into the national adaptation plans. And so, please do go back to menti.com using the same code 2340 7352, and out there you would see yeah, here I'm sharing this with you. These are the slides, and so you see and the analysis of over 60 naps, they showed these analyses, they showed that there are 35 that have at least one strong wash components. So I've written some of the countries' names, and many colleagues here are from these countries. So Bangladesh, Cambodia, Fiji, Nepal, Pakistan, etc. And yeah, but then the formulation, the validation of the national adaptation plans across all sectors is often led by ministries of environment. And uh, to be honest, I've seen this happen in many countries in Western and Central Africa, is that the WASH sector, so the ministries of WASH or the ministries of health, don't necessarily get much of a say in this, right? So if we turn this around, and if I asked you the question, do you know what WASH priorities have been in your national adaptation plans, right? And if you do know them, then do you know if these are being implemented? Right, so that is the question in this 5-minute quick consultation, and essentially from the analysis of these national adaptation plan, I picked up some specific and strong WASH components in many of these countries. So Bangladesh, Bhutan, Cambodia, Fiji, Nepal, Philippines, and the Philippines and Sri Lanka. And I would like you to please tell me if you were aware that these were the WASH priorities already uh, included in the National Adaptation Plan. And if you were already aware of them, then do you know if these are being implemented? Now, there are colleagues from other countries, and you're obviously free to also participate in this small survey. And you see, it's going to be important, I think, because it will be an illustration of how well the process of integrating WASH into climate policy is mastered, or how well it includes the WASH sector actors themselves. So I think it would illustrate that on the one hand, and on the second hand, on the other hand, Jose was saying that COP30, which is coming up at the end of this year, is the implementation COP, right? So he said quite clearly, he's no longer there, he had to leave, but he said quite clearly that, if we are able to, the WASH sector is able to say that we are aware of these priorities in the NAP and that these are being implemented, then all of the information that we collect now from you would then be upstreamed to the UNFCCC so that they're able to get an idea on whether what is included in the adaptation plans is actually being implemented. So please do take a few minutes to go back to the Menti, and I will share it here with you so that we can see what answers are coming in. Yeah. So I hope you can see my screen. And the answers, the questions are fairly straightforward. Do you know about the WASH priorities in your country's NAP? And do you know if these are being implemented? So please, when you answer these questions, write the name of your country first, so that we know. You don't have to, identify yourselves, but write the name of the country first, please. Yeah. So it's open to you, colleagues, to participate in the survey quickly, and then we will move towards the closing of the webinar. The Menti is not working, it seems. Can you see it now? I'm sorry, are you able to, could someone please confirm that that the Menti is working? I see 4 colleagues who've mentioned that it's not working. It should be. 1 second. Is it now? It is. Okay. So yes, please take a few minutes, and then we will move towards the closing of the webinar. This is the last question. Or colleagues who don't represent any one particular country, you're also free to answer this question. Right? Thank you. Okay, we'll take one more minute and then I think we'll close. So, so far we've had examples of WASH projects in the Marshall Islands, about a couple of submissions on Nepal and one on Pakistan. And so thank you for these. So in Nepal, yes. So there is awareness of especially on the planning and monitoring and reporting systems. So that's lovely. The update of the NDC, okay, and in Pakistan, the alignment with the SDGs, right? But do you know about the alignment between the with the National Adaptation Plan? If you're aware of it, then it would help. And the project by UNDP in the Marshall Islands is underway, but we don't know if it will, as a part of the NAP, the implementation of the NAP. Okay, perfect. So thank you for these submissions. I think it was to illustrate that the WASH sector really does need to sort of get its narrative clear, and also about the awareness and the integration between uh, the integration of the WASH elements and actors into the National Adaptation Plan formulation and its implementation. So thank you so much. We have these submissions about Nepal, Pakistan, and the Marshall Islands. Thanks once again. I think I will stop the survey now. It'll stay open for a couple more minutes, but I think we should move towards closing the webinar. So please, yes, I hope you can see this final slide, which is before you, which is about, yeah, the last slide, which is about closing the webinar. So my own name is Balwant Godara, so you can please always contact me. I think most of you have my email IDs. About civil society organizations, so we have an email ID on for my colleague Lisa, and about private sector research and learning, there's Vanessa Gandarias. You have her email ID. All communication support, you can please contact Hope, who's our colleague at the Secretariat. And for country self-assessments, the mutual accountability mechanism, please contact Philippa, whose email is given on this slide as well. Now, at the closing, just as I said, the recording will be made available, the slides will be made available. Please get in touch about any discrepancies in the save the date letters. Please get in touch so that if you would like SWS, me to be a part of the discussions on the SMM preparations. And if there are more questions, then we can field them. But otherwise, I think we can close this session. Thank you so much for your participation. And thank you, Jeremy and Jose, for your interventions. So thanks once again. Yes, I think there is one hand from Mr. Shah Nasir. Please go ahead. Sorry, yes. Now you're allowed to talk, Mr. Shah.
Yeah. Thank you, Balwant. Thank you, Jose, for the nice presentation and sharing all these things. I have one question. I attended the SMS, the Sector Minister Conference in Indonesia, And even all the sector minister conferences are attended by the minister from to represent Pakistan. But one dilemma is here in Pakistan, particularly when we discuss water and sanitation. When we ask the follow-up mechanism, because WASH is devolved in Pakistan, the provincial government, they are allocate money, they are implemented the project, while the minister from the federal government, from the national government, they represent Pakistan, and they basically have a recommendation and even the country paper. So I think we should even, Pakistan is not alone, maybe the other countries in the region or even across the globe will have the same things that WASH should devolve, and in some countries they are looked after by the district government and some of the provincial. So we, in Pakistan case, I'm much interested in the follow-up mechanism. When the minister meeting will happen, and when all the ministers come back to their respective countries. So I think when we meet the minister concerned at the federal government, they have no blueprint to answer the question. So that's the main reason. So I'm much interested. So the SWA Secretariat and even the people allied with this organizing the sector minister meeting should have a very close close eyes on the follow-up mechanism. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Khusro Sahib. Yes, so the follow-up mechanism is the mutual accountability mechanism, which I think Pakistan has been a fantastic user of. And the thing is that the mutual accountability mechanism would help identify the smart commitments over the coming times. And it also allows for the follow-up and the monitoring of those commitments. So the sector ministers meeting is a way to whip up all the the discussions and the commitments and the analyses. The attendance of the sector ministers meeting is a way to exert the soft power and the soft pressure between ministers, and the mutual accountability mechanism is really the way in which these specific actions are followed up, whether they've been implemented or not, right? So I think that is, it's been proven to be fairly strong in 2019 and again in 2022. So yeah. That's the way. Thank you so much. The mutual accountability mechanism is the way to monitor, to follow up.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Then I think we can end the discussion here. Thanks you for participating. Thank you, Jeremy, for the interventions, and thank you everyone for participating, especially in these three the consultations. I think they'll be very useful for us. So with that, I think we can close. Thanks.